Vicenda. I am Chief Alchemist here at Plus One EXP, which is a weird little brand that's passionate about helping connect amazing designers to great players who love their games and amazing players to great designers whose games they can love. We do that in a lot of different ways, but one of the things we're really focused on here at Plus One is talking about how we can help those creators get their games out, celebrating their launches, the releases, and the playing of their games at your tables and online. And Intrepid Merchants, we sit down with a special guest, talk to them about the work that they do, but also talk about a few things that we are excited about happening in the RPG industry and community over the course of the months. I'm super excited to have on as our second guest ever for this version of the show, Jeff Stormer. Jeff, why don't you tell people who you are, what you do, and where they can find you online?
Yeah, I am Jeff Stormer. I am the Great Clown Pagliacci of Tabletop RPG podcasts and streams. For 10 years and 2 weeks, have hosted Party of One, an actual play podcast about two-player role-playing experiences. You can also hear me on other podcasts, All My Fantasy Children, the show that I've been producing for the last year, Batman Bump in the Night. You can hear me on all sorts of weird actual play projects and I've also made games, including Anyone Can Wear the Mask, Mission Accomplished. I do a lot of things because I get bored easily, and I think that sums up my body of work in a nutshell.
Awesome. Excellent. And most importantly, where do you live?
I live in the greatest city on earth, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Go Birds.
Go Birds indeed. Jeff and I get to do a mostly every month live show at the coffee shop that I am one of the managers at. It's super fun way to bring Philadelphia culture, AP culture, and coffee culture are together. If you're ever in Seattle on the third-ish Saturday of the month, swing on by. We are skipping this month though because we will both be at PAX. We'll talk a little bit about that maybe towards the end. Jeff, I just want to start with 10 years. When you started, did you see yourself living this long?
No. I really thought Party of One was going to be a 6-month project that I was going to get bored of and then ghost, and that nobody would notice. That was sort of the stated goal, and I think it's been a colossal failure in that regard.
You've, for some weird reason, just kept on going instead.
Jen, Frank, and I, producer of the show, she and I made an agreement. We were like, we're going to launch this. We're going to make it into a weekly show. We're going to go until we get bored, stop having fun, or we feel burnt out. And then we'll pivot, or we'll do something else, or we'll walk away. And that was 10 years ago. That was January of 2016. And we'll see when that moment comes.
Awesome. I will say there's a lot of things that I will talk about within the trajectory of Plus One, how it comes into being, but I was an early listener, and it was great because I was in Seattle. My friendly local game store had indie RPGs, but One Shot Network, One Shot Podcast at that point in time, Party of One, that fledgling nascent early actual play community was super helpful in connecting with other people who were like, I love RPGs. I do not want to play D&D.
Sure.
And knowing that other games exist, it's a huge lifeline. And really helped feel a sense of, and it obviously super parasocial at that point in time. Glad we eventually got over that parasociality. But the reality is it was a lifeline in a lot of ways. Just knowing there were other freaks out there who were really excited about sitting down, playing these games. And you did it in a very unique format, right? And that format has been maintained the whole way through. You sit down with one person. Typically, there have been a couple genre bending episodes, but you sit down with one person and you play a game with them over the course of that. And I want to launch right into something that I think has evolved really over just the last year or 18 months that I've heard you talking about, because you get approached all the time for people who want to come on your show and be interviewed on your cool interview show, which is not historically the response was, that's not what I do, but
not what I do. And now I sort of have to eat my words and eat crow a little bit and say, actually, it might be exactly what I do.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, because we've given kind of the structure, right? It's you and one other person playing a game, oftentimes not the creator, sometimes the creator of that game. But you have started to talk about it as an interview show. Can you talk a little bit about the shift in that mindset for you?
Yeah, really it comes down to, I mean, as I think actual play has grown and changed, it's part of that has been noticing the ways that Party of One feels different and looks different and sounds different than a lot of other actual plays, and noticing a lot of the qualities that people that enjoy the show seek out when they are seek out when talking about the show, or the things they call out as the things they like about Party of One. As that piece together, I in kind of understanding a lot of the things that make Party of One work, and understand noticing that those were qualities that didn't necessarily exist in other actual plays, or things were that in talking with other actual play producers, creators, editors, were things that were being taken out of other actual play, and like things that people were saying like were detracting from their shows. Things like table chatter, or things like drifting out of character, or things like having conversations around the logistics of the experience,
Mhm.
wants, desires, rules, talk, teaching the game, things like that, things that a lot, in talking with other people, things that people, more creators were saying like, oh, I edit those out of my show because like it cuts away from the drama of the experience. Like, it's, if I want my show to feel like an audio drama, it cuts away, like these qualities feel out of place or at odds with the show that I'm producing. And the interesting thing that I kept running into was talking to those creators and saying like, oh, that's interesting because I haven't found that on Party of One. And when I would mention that, the response was consistently from both listeners, other people who had heard, other creators who listened to the show, peers, etc., were like, oh yeah, no, it worked. It's what I seek out Party of One for,
Mhm.
is these qualities that like don't work on the show that I am producing for this, that, and the other reason. And I think that really got me thinking about what Party of One is, and why qualities that other actual plays were pushing away from were the things that made the show really work. And a big part of that, I credit my dear friend Ned Donovan with a lot of this, with this kind of, we both had this kind of lightning rod conversation of sort of realizing, as we were chatting about the show and having a conversation similar to the one that I just described, both of us kind of having a moment of realization of like, really, what we're describing when we talk about the things that work on Party of One, the things that we're describing are qualities that are closer to an interview show, or closer to a nonfiction show, or something like a Hot Ones, or a chicken shop date, or what have you, than say a Critical Role, or a Dimension 20. Like, the joys of Party of One are closer to these sorts of nonfiction conversation shows.
Yeah.
And that got me really thinking. I mean, the phrase that Ned and I had, sort of a lightning rod moment that has really changed the branding of the show, and the material, the pitch that I give to guests when I'm talking about it. We both had a moment of going like, I think Party of One might be the Hot Ones, might be Hot
Mhm.
Ones, but for tabletop games.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Um,
so like that kind of became an active push of, what if we leaned into that, and what if we really talked about the show in that way, and put it in front of guests, and made it into an experience that makes the best out of that.
Yeah, it is. I want to go back to the roots in a little bit, but I think sitting right now with like where you are 10 years in is really helpful. And I love hearing that, but I think it also shows in your guest choice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
historically it was like, oh, here's improv people I know, or here's RPG people I know, or
Yeah.
here's people who are looking to come on and talk about their thing, but we'll do that by playing their thing, or you finding a dear friend and
Yeah.
saying like, let's just play a game. Lately you've been kind of really branching outside RPG spaces, introducing new people to role playing games, or at least new people to AP and your show. Lots of the guests lately have been like, hey, I played an RPG once, or I've heard about RPGs, or like the idea of RPGs. Talk a little bit about that shift and kind of some of the guest makeup you've had on recently, because I think it's expanding the field, and I think it's so important in a way that a lot of people may not be paying attention to.
Yeah. Really, like, what happened was it's very kind of hand in hand with sort of thinking about the nature, or thinking about the nature of the show. It's really, it really kind of had its roots in thinking like, okay, if this is an interview show, like, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be interviewing, right? And related to that, kind of a thing that we kind of a thing that really like became apparent when thinking about Party of One in the context of an interview show, or in the context of a nonfiction show, in the context of these sorts of conversation shows, was there's a unique opportunity that comes with Party of One's structure and approach and content that a lot of other actual play doesn't have. And that is exactly what you're describing. And that is like putting somebody on mic who will never be on another actual play, or who you can't hear anywhere but Party of One, because it's a unique show structure. We've talked about it. It's me and one other person, and I've been doing this for 10 years. So I'm frankly, candidly, pretty good at teaching people games and and walking through the experience of play. So like that process means that like I can bring somebody on that isn't, a seasoned role player, or isn't like a self-described actual play performer, or isn't a game designer. I can bring somebody on that has to be taught a little bit of play, or the experience of play, or is, coming to this from a board game perspective, or is coming to this from a different art form. And I can put guests in front of the viewer that they're not going to hear then next month on Dimension 20, or they're not going to hear on, a charity stream event, or this will be the only time that you will hear. This is the only time you will hear this person having this experience on mic.
Yeah.
And what's been really cool about that is you hit it on the head. Like, that is a way to bring in people that have never thought about actual play before, or thought about TTRPGs before. If I am sitting down with a game designer talking about their work, the audience that is tuning in is familiar with their work. They are familiar with games. They are familiar with my work. They are familiar with actual play. If I am bringing on an author, or a TV writer, or a musician, or a podcaster from outside of our space, outside of our little niche, their audience doesn't quite know, their audience is being exposed to this for the first time, and they get to hear a person that they know, or whose work that they admire, whose work that they've encountered before, falling in love with this experience in real time. If I've done my job well, they get to hear that person fall in love with the experience of playing a role-playing game in the first time.
And I should have pulled up this episode ahead of time, but you'll know which one it is when I start describing it. If you want to hear, I think the best example of this so far, it is the one where you did the Agents world building game, where it was like songs and trees. It was with a musician, I believe, and they were wrapped the entire time. They were getting so hyped up consistently. I should have looked at this in advance. Bad show prep on my part. Do you know which episode I'm talking
I'm
about?
trying to think. Talk further about
Agent Oak and Agent, I want to say like Echo, and it was like the Ring of Trees. And
yes, I do know the exact episode. That is the Against Time and Death with Michael Turrentine.
Yes,
That was fairly recent, so that would have been from end of September 21st, episode 468.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, and yes, exactly. Perfect example. Michael is an actor. He was a cast member on a podcast that I love, World Gone Wrong, and had never played like a role-playing game before. I think maybe at most had played like a D&D game, or had been offered to play a D&D game, something like that. But like, we chatted, he filled out our guest materials. We found a game that like was decidedly up his alley or was decidedly his vibe. And you're exactly right. You hear him fall in love with that experience in real time. You hear him captivated and almost breathless at times, going like, "Oh, I didn't realize that this could be that this was what this could feel like." Like, and that's, to me, that's the magic, because like, that's it provides a gateway to those audiences who are listening to audio drama to say, hey, this is what we do. This is an adjacent art form. And here's the experience of somebody that you've heard on another work falling in love with it.
Yeah. I mean, and they get more and more excited as the episode goes on, and vocally, right? Like, I mean, like enthusiastically. It is watching somebody fall in love with a thing for the first time happening on air. And I think I don't think that is actually uncommon on this show. Like, I think even within the like actual play and professional play spaces, Party of One has a intimacy because it's two players, and because of your experience guiding people into the space of play, allows for a lot of real vulnerability, a lot of real fun. Even when people are doing bits, they tend to move more towards the heartfelt, and it's really amazing consistently to see that. But with the shift in the show over the last year in having guests on from a much wider variety of backgrounds, I feel like that's really come into the spotlight in an entirely different way. And so I've it's been really thrilling as a longtime listener and fan of the show to watch, and somebody who loves to see like that practice evolve. I super have appreciated the way you've been guiding that and the new space you're kind of taking it into, and the way people are engaging in that. As a like a personal connection, you did Cryptid Show, one of the games that we were funding with Annika Sela as part of your anniversary week drop. The guest you had on that day, who's also named Michael, I think, who's from the Potterless podcast, we had a conversation maybe 8 or 9 years ago at a Patreon event when we were both living in Seattle about this new show they were starting called Potterless. Like, it was absolutely wild just to hear them talk about their show, and I was like, I've met this person, and had dinner with them and talked about the new show they're starting that ended up being very successful, and the work we were doing and other things like that. This is long before Plus One existed, but it was really cool to just have that like question of, I know who this person is, and this is somebody who, even though I think they have a D&D like show they do with friends, like it was a very different experience of play given both of your podcasting backgrounds. It was such a great thing. I think as a pivot to kind of talking about how things have developed and a couple other interesting things about Party of One, how do you go, but tell me a little bit more about the process of selecting the game for the player, because I think there's a lot of intentionality in the way you do that. And you were kind of like, to me, it's almost like if people have a Mind Palace, this is your like Mind Palace's like wine cellar, and you're going down and like scrolling along and like pulling down bottles, like dusting them and thinking about like, oh, what should I serve people? Not us as a listener necessarily, but the guest as an experience of play. That's my own mental image of how I think you select them. Tell us a little bit about the process. For
I've gotten sommelier a lot in the last few years. It's pretty consistent at this point, and it's not wrong. I really describe it, to me, like the selection of game to me is, that's the work. That is if Party of One is an interview show, which I have come around to saying that it is, like, that's, I think, really where, the interview and the research and the getting to know the guest happens. That's really where the prep work goes in, because, really what happens is I reach out to a guest, they say yes. It starts with sending them over like our guest form, which I have traditionally, I changed in the last really like 3 months, because I realized I could, it's the ongoing improvement of realizing I could be like pitching to guests better. But like, really at this point, the guest form is more built around, what are you excited about with your work that you want to talk about on mic? What stories do you like? What are the stories, the movies, the TV, the comics, like the novels? What are the stories that get you excited, that like you'll be excited in that space, that will get you to let your guard down? What are the what experience do you have with games, and what have you liked, whether that is video games, board games, at tabletop RPGs, etc. Like, all of that information is helpful for me, and by having the guests fill out that form, it gives me a lot of things to go off of to then say, what topics do we want to have a conversation about while we are playing the game? Like Mike is a perfect example. Mike Schubert, we talked, and he was like, we had talked, and I gave him all those questions, and he said, like, the thing I really want, that was interesting, because he really approached it full on as, like, he gave me direction of, like, here is the thing I want to talk about during the episode. He was like, these are the conversation topics that I'm excited about, because, and in his words, I am a podcaster who sometimes plays role-playing games. I am not a role-playing guy that makes podcasts. So, like, he's like, I want to have a conversation about making podcasts and about radio and about, like, all of those things. So finding a game that was about that, or that spoke to that, and was in the space of, in that radio there, that dealt around topics of, like, radio and audio and, like, the host guest dynamic, it allowed us to have those conversations. And you can hear it during play as we're kind of brainstorming ideas. We're saying things like, what are the shows that made you excited to talk about, to be in radio, to be in audio? And we both had a deep love. We both have a deep love of call-in sports radio. So we really, like, gushed about that. And it really, it is taking the information that is given and saying, how do I facilitate a conversation with this?
Yeah.
Is it I put something in front of the guest that is in conversation with their work? Is it that I put something, with Mike is a podcaster. I found a game that is loosely about podcasting that is in conversation with the thing that Mike does. Do I find a game that is entirely separate from the guest's work, but that speaks to their passions in a way that will lower their guard, so the audience sees something in that guest? Michael, Against Time and Death, Michael had said to me, I just finished reading This Is How You Lose the Time War, which Nick Bate quotes as the #1 inspiration in Against Time and Death. And so it was cool. I know that you like this. I know this is a thing that you enjoy. Here's a game that is about that, so that you kind of get swept up in play. The other, I think, example kind of finding games that, like, finding those things, finding the material that is given to me, and using that to sort of pull together, like, that is where the interview work happens, of saying, okay, if the conversation is going to be about this, here is a game that's going to hang that's going to scaffold that very nicely.
Awesome. Well, this goes back to, like, this means that you must have a relatively, like some of us other freaks, encyclopedic knowledge of, or at least well-sorted digital storage space for the games that you kind of curate for the show. You did a kind of whip around. I feel like it was around 2 years ago, but I could be wrong about that time around. Like, who has played the most games on air, like recorded different systems or games on air, and you were far and away ahead of everyone else. It was
it's not close.
Yeah, it was like you, us, and then, like, One Shot Network were like the top 3-ish that we knew. And part of that's, like, we played new games that are coming out all the time with the designers, right? We are basically offloading the having to know how to run the game to a professional who runs the game, right?
A non-0% of Party of One is exactly the same way.
Yeah. And so there is a lot of that, but like, again, especially in the mode that you're operating in now, it requires you to have that kind of knowledge. How many games have you played? And then I have a follow-up question at this point now, or roughly, like, if I don't know if you're continually, like, keeping.
I have been. It is approximately I think we're coming up on 400. I think we are. I think we passed 300. I think we passed 300 about a year and maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I know there are some repeats.
300 game February of 2024, we passed 300.
Okay.
So I would say we're at about 375 to 380 at this point.
Yeah, love it. So that's awesome. Here's the follow-up question. What has that, like, playing that many games, that broader scope of games, and obviously there's a certain level at which you're bringing them into the play culture of Party of One, which I love. I actually really love watching, seeing how that happens. You bring in the player culture, but what has that done to your brain? um, by which I think that's the real the real interesting thing there is what are some of the biggest changes you've noticed in you as a player or as a GM over time, having run that many? Like, where are places that's pushed you to?
I've really this is a topic I've thought tremendously about. And to me, like, it has, the joy in playing, I think, every type of game under the sun. I think, like, there's a pretty I don't know that there's a style of play that I haven't at least dabbled in. And, like, I think the thing that I've most gained from that is it's a little bit learning how to bring that play culture, like how to bring the play culture pieces of different gaming subcultures kind of together in service of, like, what works for my individual tables. The other thing that I've really found is, like, I've spent a lot of time deeply considering, my relationship to rules and mechanics as concepts at the table. Like, what do I get from rules? What do I get from systems? What do I get from, adventures and modules? And, like, what I get from all of those pieces in my relationship, and, like, seeing the way that different sets of rules or different game objects inspire my play or my creative processes in different ways. I've gotten a much deeper, I think, understanding of what works for me, and also what I am looking for from games more broadly, and, like, what I am looking for from the experience of sitting down to play.
Could you zone in on a couple of those things that you are looking for in those moments of play?
I have realized the thing that I like the most is the activity that I find the most satisfying in a vacuum. I think if you'd ask me my favorite part of the show, I would say 10 times out of 10 it's, like, talking with people and, like, sharing these moments with people, and it's the conversation. But, like, creatively, the thing that I am most drawn towards is the act of interpretation. The thing that I am most motivated by, or engaged with, or excited by in a play experience, is when I am given a prompt, when I am given a set of materials, when I am given a result, or, like, something is put in front of me, when I am interpreting something, and to me, like, that is the thing that is the most creatively energizing about the play experience. I obviously I've done a lot of, like, freeform-ish role play, and I've played a lot of games that are very, like, I don't know, like, here's an idea, you play it. But, like, I think to me, like, the thing that I am drawn towards with play, the thing that, like, excites me in play, excites me in games, is really a kind of constrained creativity. It is a sort of, like, what happens. It is not so much me imagining what is happening next out of every possibility. It is looking at, what do I think what does this dice result tell me? Like, how does this inform, how does this constrain and spark the creativity that I'm feeling? How does this for the queen question, like, inspire my creativity, maybe in a way that it would not have been inspired otherwise? How does this, spindle wheel card spread, what does this say to me? And what does that tell me about the world, the characters, the narrative, the story, the environment? What does that tell me about everything that we are talking about? To me, that is the incredibly satisfying thing. To me, like, that interpretation is deeply validating and important and exciting. And like, that's what I get the most out of play. And in playing a lot of different games, I've really come to understand, like, what that means for me, and by extension, going back to that, like, how to bring play cultures from one style of game into another, how to get to that place where I am interpreting and understanding and seeing and being surprised by by results and options and prompts in a variety of styles of games.
Yeah, love it. I think, like I said, there's a lot about the state of Party of One right now that like has grown out of all the hundreds of episodes, the hundreds of games, the thousands of hours of time that's gone into it. For before we shift modes into talking about some things we're really excited right now in the space, I've got kind of two more questions, and
Yep.
the first one is what are some of the biggest like transition points feel like you've had in the show? Because again, it's been a pretty consistent format. We've talked a little bit about the state that it's in, some of those big changes in the last 3 to 18 months. But I do know there's a little bit kind of a sense of the eras of a show that's been
Yeah.
around for 10 years. What have been some of those transition moments that may not have been as obvious for everybody else, but felt big to you as the person living through them?
I can point to a few. I mean, like, when we started in 2015, if I said, like, what are games for two players, and I know this because I said this and I dug into this and I read the blogs and I reviewed listicles and things, a lot of it was, here is a game that is not designed for two players. Here's how you would hack it to if you only have, if you as GM only have one player at the table.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first, I think, era of the show, or even more so, like, maybe the second, the first era of the show is that I thought it was going to be an improv comedy actual play podcast similar to One Shot, because that was the show that I had listened to the most when I was starting the show, and that was the show that, like, my format is one shot with two people. Like,
Mhm.
I'm very open about that. But, like, I think, like, the first big, like, era that I would point to is answering the question, can you play a role-playing game with just two people? And, like, examining, like, here's how you play game X. Here's how you play Vampire the Masquerade with just two people. Here's how you play Feng Shui with just two people. Here's how you play Star Wars Edge of the Empire with just two people. I think where it expanded, the second really big era, is sort of like celebrating it changed with games circa 2018, 2017, 2018, 2019, around suddenly there's a huge influx of games because of Kickstarter and crowdfunding and the rise of itch.io and things like the Emotional Mech Jam. Suddenly there's a huge influx of games that are designed for two people. And I think the second big era is saying, not just, how do you adapt games for two people, but, like, saying, okay, what is a game that is designed for two? What is an experience you can only have with two
Mhm.
people? And then, I would say circa maybe 2020, 2021, 2022-ish, it really became, I think, we started doing a lot more like breaking games, or breaking format, breaking games, and kind of like exploring, I think it got weirder and more experimental. And then I think, like, there was a point where it was I would say circa like 2021, 2022, like there's kind of two things happening of we're sort of doing a lot more like weird format breaking. So doing things like what happens if we just fully throw out the idea that a Powered by the Apocalypse game has a GM, and we just were like, yeah, this is going to be a GM-less experience. We're going to make this up on the fly and see what happens. And also it became very, I would say, in line with maybe like a journalism or critique of like we are examining games that are designed for two to see like what they do, how they operate. You know, we're getting into the guts of it. That's really when we had a consistent flow of designers as guests and really got into like, this is what makes this game different and what makes this game special. And I think like the current iteration of the show and that last 18-month period really grows out of, hey, if we're already kind of in conversation with nonfiction shows, like what are the nonfiction shows that are the most interesting and exciting to us?
Yeah. Love it. Well, I'm super excited to sit down in 10 more years and hear about the next few eras
Hell yeah.
of Party of One.
Party of One 20th anniversary is going to go so
It's going to
wild.
be so hard.
It's going to go wild.
No, but it's been really tremendous just like being able to like talk with you. The last question I have, and this comes up a lot, and we can touch on it as lighter, as deeply as you want to. I think a thing that I often hear you saying online and in private spaces, and that resonates with our team also is
I hate the phrase. I hear you say this in private spaces on stream. Oh, that's terrifying.
You say it publicly also. Is that you oftentimes feel a dissonance and a disconnect with what other people are doing when they talk about actual play, right? And I think some of it is this nonfiction focus, some of those different bones, but break that open for me a little bit more, because I do think it is healthy and helpful for us to think broadly about actual play. And I think people who come from the perspective I think that you and I largely both come from oftentimes really struggle with, oh, the thing we're doing not being considered actual play by some other people because there's an element they consider essential. Like this is a personal reflection. Somebody the other day saying like, oh, live play, I don't even consider live play to really be the same thing as actual play. And that was wild for me to hear. Like not it was really interesting to dive into that conversation with the person. It's somebody I love, somebody I don't necessarily agree with apparently all the time. But that was the thing I had to deal with the other day of somebody being like, oh, people playing things live that aren't pre-produced and post-produced. I don't know if that's actual play or not. And I felt really weird. But I don't think that's the same for you, because that is something that you are, other than the live shows we do once a month, doing pre-production and post-production to a certain degree on the show. So can you share a little bit about kind of your perspective on where you sit in that space and some of the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think like for me, and I think this is part of the journey of the show getting to where it's currently gotten. And that is, you know, in the last 5 years, we've seen actual play grow and change in very interesting ways. And one of those big changes is we've seen the rise of like and I say this as a board member of the digital media of the Audio Fiction World Cup, which oversees a lot of the WebFest as a structure, is like a unifying factor among many WebFests. Like we've seen festivals spring up that are recognizing actual play on a critical level. Mm-hmm. We've seen awards pop up that are like honoring actual play and giving actual play, you know, a boost and promotion. And like we have seen actual play, like a growth and a professionalization of actual play as an art form. We
have an academic now. We may have more than one academic, but we've got
at least one.
M.
M. Hey, hi, hello. Shout out to M. Big fan.
Dr. Friedman
shout out to Dr. Friedman. Hope that we can hang out when you're in my city. I think like, to me, yeah, like we're seeing growth and we're seeing change. And with that, you know, especially in the last, 4 or so years, like we have seen some degree of standards or expectations. We've seen a crystallizing of we've seen a crystallizing of, how to even put it, of expectation. We've seen a crystallizing of expectation in the last few years. And we've gotten some very we've gotten like and part of that has been driven by Dr. Friedman has talked extensively about this over the years. Like, there was a humongous influx of actual play creators who came into the art form circa 2020 by way of Dimension 20, and by way of Critical Role, and by way of seeking out theater outlets that they could do from home, like a lot of actors, performers, storytellers. We've seen some growth, and like we've seen, and with that, people have come in with an expectation of like, this is what I think the art form is, this is what I'm getting out of it. And we've seen conversations around, this is what I think defines a successful production, this is what I think defines a successful actual play. And that has been driven by a community, both on the judging side, on the WebFest side, on the practitioner side. That has been driven by a lot of creators and shows that are making art with a specific intention, that are saying, I am using actual play as a fiction first outlet to tell a story. And therefore, like, I am in conversation with audio drama, I am in conversation with fiction storytelling, I am in conversation with fiction. And so what you kind of get into, or what has happened over the last few years, is in those conversations, in those circles, in those professional spaces, and you see it reflected out into the art spaces in general, you get into a place of, what is recognized as a good and successful show, it has certain qualities. I have found Party of One, going back to that first question, like, is an outlier, is an exception to a lot of rules that have been kind of propped up in the last few years. I've been in conversations where people have said, people have taken it as a given and said, well, your actual play is going to need music and sound design. Like, you're going to have to try and create a soundscape and try to like create a visual audio experience for your listener. And, I've raised my hand and said, well, we're actually pretty we very intentionally don't include sound design on Party of One because we want the silence to be a player at the table. And it goes back to that sentence that I said earlier of like, oh no, I like it in Party of One. Like, that's Party of One's kind of the exception to the rule. Or, well, you should be having conversations around, you should really be editing out table talk because you want people to, you want people to be you want people to be in the scene, in the moment. Really, the thing that makes a great actual play performer is they have improv experience and they're comfortable switching into scene play and losing themselves in a character. And it's, well, no, Party of One actually, like, the thing that makes the show really work is that you're never really, even when we're playing, Agent Oak, even when we're playing, our time agents, we're not getting lost in the way that we have, you are hearing Jeff and Tony, you are not hearing, Agent Alpha and Agent Omega. Like, you are not hearing, we are always the centerpiece of the experience. And it's, well, Party of One's an exception in that way. Like, Party of One, that works, and it's not for shows that are going for other things. And so that dissonance for me has really come from the number of times that I've heard standards put forward as this is what an actual play should be aspiring to. And for Party of One's benefit, I've had a moment of, well, that doesn't really apply to the show that I make. Right. And acknowledging that because of that, the show that I make is stronger for not following those rules. Yeah. And that is, on the one hand, incredibly creatively inspiring. On the other hand, there is a loneliness that comes with that because you are not making the thing that everybody else is making, and therefore you are the weird outlier.
Well, like I said, for me, like, it is always enjoyable because even though like we don't do soundscaping either. I mean, like, somebody, if the creator shows up and they're like, I've soundscaped this whole thing, rock and roll. Like, but it's happened maybe twice in hundreds of streams run where somebody's like, I've got a soundscape for this, right? And it's fine if it does happen. And there is like music that we intentionally use for different things in our pre-show or other things like that, but none of them happen in the middle of it, right? For us, we're very focused on the game as the star of the show. Like for us, we are specifically highlighting that, and we're kind of falling out and letting the game take primacy. I think those
Mhm.
intentional choices are really what matters, and it is really
Yeah,
hard
for
whenever
sure,
people are
100%.
like, oh, this is what everybody should be doing. It's like, but everybody shouldn't be doing the same thing. Like we've all got to be making those intentional choices. And I think Party of One is the easiest thing to hold up and say, here is a game that has here is a show that is made consistent and intentional choices longer than almost anybody else has. And look at the amazing and beautiful thing that has created. The other thing I think your show demonstrates is you can play a game pretty fast if you need to.
I've gotten very good at sussing out how long a game like could reasonably take, and how to cut corners, and how to skip to the good stuff in a game. It's gotten to the point where like it's gotten to the point where when I need to play a game for longer, either it's like a charity stream thing or not, I still end up around the 2 hour mark
Yeah,
going, and we're done. We wrapped it up. And then
that's
going like,
great.
oh crap,
So,
that's like,
yeah.
this is the end point and we're 90 minutes in. Crap.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're gonna make a shift in just a second. Judd, over on YouTube. Sorry that I did not see your comments. I did not have my multi-stream comments feeding in properly. They are fixed now. But I think we covered most of what you were asking for. If you got anything else though, or anybody watching has any questions, feel free toss them in. We're gonna talk about some things that Jeff and I are excited about that are happening in the indie RPG spaces right now. But before we do that, let's talk about a couple cool things we've got going on at Plus
Yeah.
One. We right now, Ambition, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, is in its last day of funding over on GameFound as part of the RPG Party. We caught our first episode. We sat down with Cam Bradley to talk about the RPG Party, what it was, and why I think it was one of the most important things happening in RPGs last month. But Ambition is a game that we are working with on their marketing. However, we've been doing a 3-week long actual play that we're going to dive into a little bit later. It is a Taoist psychological RPG that has 3 different modes of plays. The books are absolutely gorgeous, but they're also Lancer sized. They are 400 pages each, along with some supplemental zines, a tarot deck, and other elements. But when I say this game has made me use role playing muscles I didn't know I had, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But it's amazing. You should go check it out at ttrpg.link/ambition. Also, feel free go over to the Plus One website. We've got a couple new zines up for Zine Club this month. We've got Ritual Deck, which is a Yu-Gi-Oh inspired teens with battle cards and amnesiac spirits carved from Brindlewood game that's coming out as our story game. We're going to be playing that later on this month in a 2-shot. I'm trying to get Viditia on because they're allowed to come on the Plus One channel.
You do this to me on my episode. You say these things to me.
We've also got our adventure game Heaven in the Dust, which is very Hadestown Dust Bowl PBTA, a little bit Belonging Outside Belonging, where you are playing forces in the world, but also the gods themselves in an America that's falling apart in the 1920s. Maybe resonant with the time. But then we also have What a Horrible Night, the first third-party adventure dropping for Mythic Bastionland with Chris McDowell's permission. We've already sold through half the print run. It is a self-contained dungeon crawl like experience set in a shifting labyrinth. Is there a bull in the middle? I don't know. You're gonna have to check it out to find out. But the physical design is that it's very art rich with art by Robbie Burns, where the players are seeing the dungeon room they are in on one side, and the other side of the book with a Wyro bound has everything the GM needs to describe the room and the choices they can make. It's basically functions as a mini GM screen. Amazing writing by Riley Coyote, who does some of the best like introductory adventure work out of anybody. So if any of those games sound great, head over to plus1exp.com and check them out. If you're not a member of Zine Club, it helps power everything we do here on Plus One. Check that out at rpgzine.club. But let's talk about some amazing things happening that other people are doing. Venetia has not confirmed, Jeff. We don't know that it's going to happen. But when you're playing a battle card RPG,
Yeah,
there is
I look, I
you
recognize
yeah.
that. I recognize that it's part of being a true hater is being able to acknowledge greatness, and Venetia is tremendous and also yes, you're exactly correct.
Yeah. Let's talk about some cool things happening in the industry. We're gonna talk a little bit about over under. I spent about a week losing 2 to 3 hours a day to over under. It could have done more, did not. Jeff, are you familiar with over under? What do you already know about it?
I've got like a loose idea that it was like a play by post war game that also had like a freeform role play element happening simultaneously, and the oddness that comes when those two things are happening side by side.
Yeah, it is. It is a game that Sam Sorensen really kind of was created in partnership with Sean McCoy, set on Prospero's Dream, really the central hub setting of the Mothership universe. People sometimes will never use Prospero's Dream, but Pound of Flesh, where it first started, was an amazing breakout hit and really brought a lot of attention to the Mothership system. And they were funding a fuller version of that adventure as part of Mothership Munch, which again, a huge part of what's happening this month in indie games. But it is set there. It was facilitated in Discord. Channels would pop up and go away. There were 6 different factions vying for control. There were faction level bosses at the start who were basically the faction level bosses are playing one game. There's kind of some mid tier people playing a different game, and then there's almost 1,000 other people who are just wandering around the Discord, doing weird little jobs, making coffee shops, buying and selling art, doing all kinds of weird stuff. If you're out there and you're watching and you were playing over under, would love to hear your thoughts. I was in for a few days, and it is captivating. I'm trying to get Sam set up and a few other people set up to do a 3-part retrospective next month. My biggest question will be, were we playing Mothership? And I think it's a great question to debate because there was no requirement to interact with any of the systems of Mothership, right? We're talking
Right.
setting and theme, but very like the only time I interacted with the mechanics were when somebody doing like people running the docks, and I was a teamster. Were like some of them were using some modified Mothership mechanics on rolls to repair these giant ships that would come in. If you know Sam and you know these kind of mega catafax games, cataphracts games that Sam's run, they're these big war games. They have very few rules other than like, hey, people need to eat this much. Here's how far people can move in a day. You as an individual can only control so many people. So if your forces get too big, you have to recruit friends and bring them in to control those factions. That's their normal war gamey function. So there's a map that Sam controls, and there's a lot of it. This was 1,200 people plus in the server. It was I got in, I avoided it for the first week. Then I was like, hey, if I don't do this, I will regret it, because even if they do this again next year, people will come in with strategies. People will come in with ideas. People will come in with trying to make moves based on the first thing. They'll want to be recreating events of what happened. You will never have the discovery of this moment. And so like, I was like, I gotta get in on this, right?
Sure.
And so I got in on the second week. It was a lot of fun, a lot of free-form role-playing. We had a GM get too stoned to run us through the adventure they had, so we had to GM-less, like round-robin GM through the rest of this imaginary thing that we didn't really know what was, other than a brief outline of the rest of it. It was a blast. But the weird patterning that human beings do with their brain and what happens in the collective unconsciousness of a group playing, the kind of groupthink that you want at a table culture, multiply that to the nth degree. Like, I made a random one-off comment about my coffee being salty because it's an easy way to make cheap coffee taste better, is put a little salt in it.
Sure.
It turns out one of the other characters was this like lost fisherman who couldn't remember how they got to the station, and that one of the major parts of Faith was trying to discover, or had found a folio, like an illuminated manuscript that was this giant whale Leviathan deity. All of these things are happening, and like I go to confession about this crisis of faith my person's having because of all their experiences out on that mission. And of course I go to confession. And they're like, and the person there goes, you should talk to this cardinal who found this folio. it's this whole thing starts just spinning up
Sure.
around this, because I was like, oh, salt in my coffee, it'll be whatever. So that kind of stuff, but even more Gonzo. There are moments where like it became very clear more safety was needed. There was people
Mhm.
contacting people out of game. There was a lot of really intense stuff. And today is the first day off. And it is like watching people get woken up from being in suspended animation in a massive like online video game. Like if they had been isekai'd away for a month,
Sure.
you are and there's awareness of that. Like they're doing a lot of support in the server to be like, people were living here. There are people who are dropping out because they're like, I couldn't handle doing this. It was intense. It was amazing. Even if it happens again, there will never be another
Sure.
moment like it. Having heard that, watched it, any questions or thoughts about like what like how that resonates with you or anything else?
Um, uh, I mean, it's like there's a, I mentioned this. I have a deep and abiding, one of the big sources of my tabletop or my role playing experience comes from specifically uh forum based online freeform role play, and like watching a large group of people kind of discover that was very kind of delightful and exciting. Like watching people watching like a large group of like tabletop RPG adjacent folks kind of like entering into this space and like discovering and like experiencing it in like a kind of a fresh way was very exciting. It was a thing that like I was like, this isn't necessarily for me, but I it was happening at the same time that I was also getting wrapped up in a large scale of reform role playing experience, and seeing people's accounts. I was like, yeah, that feels right. No,
Yeah.
I remember that feeling. I know this vibe. I see myself in all of you.
And it was at one point they like did a survey on how many people were GMs versus just players. It was like 98% to 2% were GMs. Like 98% of the people who are in there like run games, do game design. But like most of us have no idea what the high level faction stuff was doing. It was really cool. I'm so glad I participated. And then I was flying somewhere and knew I was going to be unavailable for a week. So that's why I was like, if I get in, I'll have an easy out because I can't keep on
Right.
playing next week. The day I quit was the day like weird things started happening in the game that required us to be like, pause, we need additional mods and support. Sam had to, and I know Sam well enough to be like, Sam does not have any game events planned. People were like, this must be some sort of massive world event that they have planned. They had to be like, there is none of that happening. Like, this is all y'all playing in this space, which is just a really beautiful thing. So yeah,
Mhm.
that harkening back was really great. The amount of weird individual little designs, people just being like, I'm gonna sell meat, a coin a pound, tell me tell me you've got meat and I'll send you some coins. It was so interesting, like just the different plot lines people latched onto. There's going to be a ton of ink spilled over the next year about this experience, I'm sure. So if you haven't checked it out yet, got plenty of time to catch up, and hopefully we'll be doing a few retrospectives here on the channel next month. Let's switch over though. You brought this one up. I have heard of it in passing, but I have not checked it out extensively. Tell me about Folio.
Oh my god, I'm so excited to talk about Folio. I'm so excited to talk about Folio. Folio is an actual play podcast focused on solo and epistolary role-playing games. Seda, the host, basically the format, is it is a collection, like each episode, each arc, Seda gets usually between 2 and 4 people to record themselves playing a solo role-playing game. And then they take all of that off. Like each player plays completely, like the complete pure solo play experience of like, I am sitting down, I am playing the game, I am not like talking to anybody else. It's me and a mic. It's me in front of a microphone for an hour. They then take each of those recordings and they edit them together. So what you are hearing
Mm.
is 3 simultaneous different playthroughs of the same game. And like you're here experiencing the full scope of what a solo game can be from 3 people who, you know, are bringing nothing to the table but their own creativity and experience. And you're hearing how vastly different those stories can be while tied together by the structure that is provided by the game itself. It is genuinely and truly one of the most fascinating ways to approach actual play that I have experienced in a very, very long time. And from the moment I first heard the pitch, I have been having a quiet, slow meltdown about it because it's so good that it makes me a little mad.
I'm super excited about this. Sada's just a tremendous designer. Like, we've got to play a couple games with them, and I'm just always so impressed with the little bits. Oh, we the 3 of us have played a game together because we played.
Yes, that is correct.
We did a little Down We Go Xenomap game. Like, just love their way of approaching play. And like I said, I'd seen this posted about, but really have not dove in deeper into it. I'm super excited to see it. Also, just going through and seeing some of the names. Like, some of them are like designers and friends that I love. Other ones are players I've sat down to play at games with who I'm absolutely thrilled to see like their names on there. These are all people who I would be like, oh man, this is gonna rip. Just knowing the brain behind it and the people doing it, I would be thrilled. Like, super glad that you brought it to my attention.
Yeah.
I have slept on it way too much, and I'm super excited. Do you have a like a favorite episode? Even you don't have to know the number, but like a story that kind of really hit you initially, and you're like, "This is it."
I mean, it's a cop out answer to say the first episode, but like I listened to the first episode, and like immediately, it like in hearing the first episode, which I believe is the xenobiology game, if I remember correctly. I'm looking it up to remind myself. The specific game.
Scrolling.
I know Caleb, dear friend, Caleb Zane Hewitt is in it. Accomplice.
Yeah.
And I believe Accomplice is which one is Accomplice? Accomplice is like you are the assistant to a monster hunter who is like building, like helping them build their trap, and like it's beautiful. Like it's so wonderful. It's Caleb and Tomas Jimenez Rioja. Like it is, you're hearing these wonderful stories take shape. You're hearing like how vastly different they approach play. And I remember just being absolutely blown away. I listened to it. Maybe not the ideal experience. I remember listening. I remember I was on a plane listening to it, and just even over the rumble of the plane being like, this is the most coolest and exciting thing that I've heard in so long.
Good call, Judd, that I should be grabbing links and dropping them out for people. Let's see. That is to the Apple Podcast link, which may not be your podcatcher of choice, but should help you discover it on your own. And I will go back and drop in the link to Sam's rules for over under also too. And then one suggested by somebody who is in the chat right now. This is something I've seen Sarah building for the last little bit. But let's talk a little bit about the solo RPG list. This is a list on the internet of solo and low player count RPGs. I wanted to bring this up because even though they are solo games, there are a lot of 2-player or low player count games on here also. So a good place for folks who love stuff like Party of One to search things out and find new games. This has been a love child of Sarah's for a little while that they've been promoting. It was really funny in the server. They were talking about it just like abstractly in the self promo place, and somebody was like, "Oh, somebody's building a thing like this," and then like sent them a link to their own thing. It was really just kind of wonderful and sweet moment.
Wait, hold on. To be clear, you're telling me that somebody you're telling me that somebody told them that treatment was simple and that the great clown Pagliacci was in town and that they should go and see them?
Go and see the great clown Pagliacci. But if you are somebody who likes solo games, and this is like, so we were at Metatopia, which is one of the next upcoming things we're going to talk about a little bit. Over the weekend, it was my first time there, and Olivia Hill was like, "I want to get into solo games. I don't want to journal. I'm an author. It feels like work. What other
I
solo
feel very
RPGs are there?"
similarly
Yeah.
about a lot of solo games. I want a game that feels like a game, not a game that is just prompting me to write.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who love that, and that's great, and that is not a slam on anybody, but like being able to pick up new things and be like, hey, Down We Go has solo rules in the back, like fully accessible to everything in it. You're just gonna make a little party of weird little dudes and guide them through dungeon adventures, right? Like Last Oath does something very similar in a kind of a Shadows of Colossus advanced fighting fantasy method. Sure, but we just published Strong's Feast Verder combo, like their indie groundbreaker, I want to say, award-winning games from a while back. Luna gave them a beautiful like new treatment. And one is a solo game that's a reflection on food, right? So it is about
Mhm.
chopping and tearing and cutting and preparing food to be consumed. There's a mindfulness to it, right? So being able to pull in different solo games that have different functions and different focuses is huge, but it's so hard to sort through them. So it was really exciting to see all this kind of come together. That like this, yeah. Odds and ends just commented they appreciate this also. Sarah, this is such a great project, and I do
It's
not think it
amazing.
has gotten enough attention. Jeff, what like when you're looking for a solo game, like we just talked about things we like, things we don't like. What are some of the ones you've loved, or what are some of the things that really are attractive to you when you're looking at?
I want to say first off, it's so funny when you said it's great for anybody looking to get into solo games, because I thought you were going to say it's great resource for anybody that say has to find a different solo or duet game to put in front of a guest every week and needs to have a list of 3 to 5 of them to send in an email. If that happens to be you for whatever reason, this resource is tremendously useful.
Made for Jeff Stormers everywhere.
Truly, truly. I very similar to Olivia. I like it to feel like a game. You know, it goes back to what I was saying about my relationship to rules and like what I kind of get out of the experience of play. And like, but for me, like, you know, if it's just me and I'm just kind of like, you know, if I the bluntest way to say it, or maybe the flippant way to say it, is like, if I wanted to write, if I wanted to just write, I would write. You know, I write enough as is, like having, you know, a game to play and mechanics to interact with and like numbers to fiddle with and dice to roll and things, like makes it feel more like I am playing a game, and that is what I am looking for from a solo play experience.
Yeah, I love it. Also, I will say like it has become like people are looking for like it is at every convention we go to, we group solo and low player count games together. Not just because it's convenient, but like they have become the games that sell out first at most conventions. Like
Sure,
people are
I get
looking
it.
for lonely fun. Hey, it's just me and my partner. Hey, it's like I can't get a big group together, but I want to be able to play more. Um this is something people want and are excited about. There should be more games on the site. People should go submit their games on the site. Submit your games on the site, people. And we will put it out to the plus one like designers to make sure they get their games up there. But would love to see this list grow. Would love to see it get more support. Please help share it out, spread the word about it. Sarah's done a really great job. Also, when I ask people like, what are cool things you think we should talk about this month? The only person who actually responded was Sarah, which is not the reason you made the list, but like made it way easier to just be like, I'm gonna pick this one because you responded. Um, Jeff, tell me a bit about Dice Exploder, what they've been doing that's made you excited
Dice
lately.
Exploder just wrapped up a 4-part series on actual play, where they like examined specific actual play shows and specific moments within those shows and like what they say about actual play as an art form. They covered an episode on my favorite actual play of the last few years, which was Twice Rolled Tales, Last Train to Brooklyn, which was a uh Last Train to Bremen actual play podcast, or actual play like video production that was filmed and played on the actual New York City subway, which is a sentence that is on, like, it tells you everything you need to know about like why it made my brain spin. But it was a lot of great interviews with people about like what they're getting out of actual play and what actual play is. It's really some really wonderful, insightful conversations about like the growing natures of actual play. There was a great episode with Ken Lowry about specifically the like the community broadcasts for Void 1680, about like what that means and how that impacts play as an object or the game as a community. Like all of those things, incredible. What a wonderful series of interviews. I mean, Dice Exploder already one of my favorite interview podcasts, period. But like this series in particular was could not have been more my jam.
Yeah. It's great. I've got actually the Twice Rolled Tales pulled up. We're not gonna be able to watch a lot of it. I just want to give people like a taste of it, like 30 seconds to a minute of it right now.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
I should have shaky cam warned everybody ahead of time.
I mean, it is filmed with handheld cameras on the subway in the streets of New York. I think like they fair warning about the shaky cam, but also like I think it is, it adds to the guerrilla nature of the experience.
Yeah, they talk about it in the episode.
Go ahead and clip that bit onto your pants or wherever.
Also, just their way of framing the entire thing, using the camera. Go watch the whole thing. I just wanted you to get a taste of like this is an actual play shot on a handy cam live. They film it in pretty much one long cut on the subway. Then they come back and they edit in the different elements. It is a tremendous experience of a certain type of actual play, right? Like one that I think is tremendously distinctive and does not exist in any other way. And I'm super thrilled to discover it. Like the Twice Rolled Tales team also just does amazing game design and work also too.
Incredible.
Yeah. No, I love this, and I'm a huge fan of Dice Exploder. The Procedures at Play series we do here is different, but has some very like similar resonance to like really diving deep into a specific part of design and trying to see what it's doing in play. Also, just shout out, they've got a great interview with the Bakers that just dropped about the Apocalypse World 3rd Edition, also too on Dice Exploder. That's really great. If you're not checking out Dice Exploder, you need to be. I'm going to link to the Void 1680 AM interview because it's excellent as well.
Incredible interview.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about before we talk about Metatopia is ambition. Transparently, Yanni is giving us money to talk about ambition, generally speaking, but not to say the things I'm about to say. It was to do the actual play to help with marketing. We are huge fans of this game. But Ambition is live over on GameFound right now. It's the last 12 hours. What I want to talk about though, we just did a 3-week actual play on our YouTube channel. We had myself, Sarah, Dusty Hill, and Artie, who goes by Werewolf, on Werewolf BF on most spaces. And we had Yanni do it. It's tremendous. Jeff, there isn't another game like this. Have you followed Ambition much at all?
No, this is the first. I've somehow missed all of this, and that is the horrifying nature of the internet. That a bunch of people that I like made a thing, and I'm now hearing about it weeks later.
So Yanni came by the booth at Gen Con. They were doing playtesting. Dropped off a card. I pick up this little business card. It's like got metallic foiling of like a creature falling from the heavens, and it says a psychological Taoist tarot fantasy tactics TTRPG, and I'm like, I know what all those words mean.
I know what they mean in a vacuum.
I don't know what they mean together.
I'm very excited to learn what they mean together.
So it is a an RPG, and like it is crunchier than what I typically go in for, but I'm also like a give me GURPS or give me rules light, like nothing in between. And so we're back in that GURP space. We've got two 400-page books. Only one is necessary for most players. The other one's a GM one. There are 3 to 4 character sheets per player. That seems like a lot, but there are 3 phases of play, and you're basically looking at a sheet for each phase of play, kind of, right? The central thing is that essentially, and there's so many things about this game that I like. If you described any one of them to me as a single element, I'd be like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, essentially, the majority of the rolls that you make in the game, if they're not like tactical combat rolls where you're like trying to hit somebody with an ability, but the central role you make most of the time is consulting one of your 36 interior voices, and asking them for knowledge or perception about what is happening in the situation or the relationships or the world around you. And as somebody who skews like perception and knowledge roles in my primary form of play, like I'm an OSR player. I mean, I love story games, but even in those, I get to oftentimes dictate a lot of what I'm seeing, right? This is you being able to, like, all of the roles are about introspection. All of the roles are about something. So, like, to give an example, like, there's one that's written entirely in Greek that essentially means hospitality, right? So this would be about how I create hospitable situations, the understanding of how to make someone feel welcome. If someone's ill at ease, if they are trying to make me go away, like, and when you roll, you're trying to kind of hit this. The sweet spot is like 20 to 25, right? If you go over that, you become compulsive, and you like your character feels like they have to do something based on the information they're given. If it's really low, like below 10, the voice is going to be too quiet. You're not going to get a lot of information. So you've got a range in which you're getting a lot of information, and then a sweet spot where you're going to get really clear information by like checking things. But there's this constant process of working with the GM to get information about the situation and figure out how your character feels and thinks about what they're happening. And that is kind of the central element of the game. But there's like one of the voices is All Night Movie, which you roll to have had a dream about a way the thing that's happening in front of you right now, that you have already had and you're remembering, or about a way it happened in another world that you briefly perceived. There is the monomyth, which is like voice, which is trying to figure out how your story and other people's stories or the story of what's happening align with each other. There's all kinds of different weird voices that you're going to like ask, and this is the central play of the game, along with tarot spreads. And at every time you discover a new location or a new NPC, or you're looking through items and picking things up, you have the option to flip your card over a couple times per like journey, and that realigns the scene to be a warped reflection of your character. So you might sign something that's really helpful to them, or that reminds them of a painful moment in their past, or it might reshape the NPCs to be other kind of like people who have lived similar but different lives to you, that show you something about yourself. Jeff, it's fucking wild.
I'm losing my cool here. I'm having a slow meltdown.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I will say, I'm going to provide a caution warning as I talk about the central themes of the unknown that we played. So if I'm going to touch on it briefly, but it's just FYI, I'm going to talk about suicide, and someone's choice to end their own life. So we are looking for a character in this unknown who is somebody whose power is created by a curse. They're called a gun witch. They're incredibly powerful. This one Lily has lived into their mid to late 20s, which is incredibly old for a gun witch, because the curse usually takes them before that point and turns them into a terrible being. So it is, you get power, but this horrible thing will catch up with you one day, and you will become a thing that must be hunted. And Lily has survived longer than most gun witches do before that happens, but knows their time is drawing near, and you are looking for her. And in that, in the entire lead up, you are reflecting on your relationship, what brought you here, how she impacted you, all those other things. When you get there, you can try to convince her to it, but it is kind of a fixed moment. Like Lily has made this choice. If you are going to force her to not do it, you're going to do it in a way that is harmful to her own agency, right? And it forces you to basically, it doesn't force you to, like, you have plenty of ways you can play through this and talk through this, and it's very clear from the get-go on the adventure that this is where you're headed, so everybody is bought into it. But there's a lot of moments where you sit in silence and like
Sure.
it's very clear at the table that like there is not an answer on my sheet, and we don't know what to do about this necessarily, because we wouldn't know what to do about it in real life. And I have there were two times in the game where I was like, this is intense and it is different than anything else I've ever played. And one was in that final scene, and the other one was in the tribunal phase, which is to set a lighter tone, kind of like an Ace Attorney social combat like mode of play. So there are 3 modes of play. And when you get to that last one, if you want to try to use that, you can, but again, you're trying to limit somebody's agency and convince them to basically become a monster that will have to be killed. Because they are at that point. And they're even, I was looking at my moves and I was like, there's a move I can do here that would show me about whether Lily is really here in front of us, or whether in this dream space that we are in, we are encountering an echo of her. And I chose not to use it, like, because my character didn't want to know. And I
Sure.
also, as a player, didn't want to know. Like, super intense role-playing moments that just naturally evolved out of it. The tribunal phase is like unlike anything else I've ever done, but the whole experience was beautiful and haunting. And it's on our channel, so it feels a little bit self-aggrandizing to talk about it. But the game itself, I think, deserves a lot of attention. It's the first time there's an actual play of it in Fusion, and I think there should be more of them. So, yeah, any thoughts on any of that?
This I'm excited to check this thing out because I'm a little it's very rare, like it's nerve-wracking a little bit. It's a damn, this sounds the most up my alley, and I cannot believe that I'm just now discovering
It's also so gorgeous. Like the whole thing is beautiful. Yanni does all the art also. Yanni as a GM is just like doing really great embodying. Like, the GM load in this game is heavy. I'm not going to even pretend. Like, the player book's 400 pages, the GM book's like 400 pages. It's a lot, but I think it really flowed super smoothly, was really tremendous. The quick start's really approachable. And even earlier when you were talking about like you leave in the moments of silence on your thing, like there are numerous times where I was like, man, I am sitting here and I don't know what to do, and it's just silent on air right now. And there's been a number of other times where it's happened where it's like, that's fine. That's what needs to be happening in play at this moment, and we don't need to be uncomfortable with the fact that that's where we're all kind of at. Like, and so it was just really, really tremendous. Critical Chaos asked about folk horror recommendations. I mean, I think this did folk horror really well. I'll think about it in a second and get back to some other things. The last thing I want to talk about together in our time is Metatopia. I went for the first time this last week, and you said it used to be a regular con for you pre lockdown. Tell us what you love about Metatopia.
It's a really magical experience. Metatopia, for those that don't know, is a playtesting convention. It is a tabletop game event really focused on professionals bringing games to play test them with people and to like test specific pieces of their game. As a system sicko, as a rules sicko, like, there's such a powerful joy in like getting into the guts of games and going like, mechanically this doesn't work, the numbers here don't add up. What I'm feeling when I go through this ritual is this. There's also this like focus group experience of this focus group. There's focus groups around like, I want to make a game about Canonize, which is a game that I'm publishing next year, was a focus group at Metatopia where I was like, hey, this is a thing that I want to do. I don't know how to do it. And we started talking about it and it became a game. And like the experience of being in that professional space full of people, all of whom are here for the same thing, all of whom are really focused on, I have a game, I'm building a game, or I like games. I want to help them be great by playing them and testing them and stress testing them and seeing how they evolve. Like there's such, and the panels and industry discussions are great. Incredible list of attendees, incredible events, incredible games, the experience of playtesting for a couple days, unlike anything else. Like it just was magnificent. Every year I went, and every year it was the best event that I would go to in a given year.
I mean, co-sign on all of that, right? Like I was working a booth. We took the IPR slot, which it just so people know what that means. There's only one booth. It's the
Yeah.
IPR booth. We did it because as an affiliate for IPR and took all of our own games, which is great because we have tons of stuff that was play tested at Metatopia. Like on the table, we had designers who were there. But it's really funny because it was like all of our team is already going. So they were like, yeah, we have a hard time getting people to cover this just because there's not a lot of sales. I'm like, sales are not the only type of value. We did fine, but like the value was going and being with our team and getting them to experience that. We got to do some workshops. Richard hosted a zine meetup. I did one on press kits. I did one on You've Made a Game Now What with Kurt Covert. It's a mix of board game and RPG people. There's about 300 to 350 people.
There's
it's
board
small.
games, role playing. Yeah, there's a mix of board games, role playing games. Jen and I we would go every year and play test a LARP, which was always cool and
tons
exciting.
of great LARP. Yeah.
Tons of great LARP. Double Exposure really does a lot of great LARP events, but tons of really cool getting to like play test a LARP, play test some board games, some card games, and like it leads to a really wonderful playtest experience because like you get people who are fully outside. Like you get the people who are coming in and are like, I've been designing role-playing games for 25 years. Like I am well versed in how to speak role-playing game. And you get people who are like, I come from board games. If you're describing what you're describing does not make sense to me because I'm not a role-playing game person. And that is incredibly valuable feedback.
Yeah.
As you are developing a product for a mass market.
Yeah, like there's some general play test and there's called a high test. At the high test, it'll be all game designers, typically in your field, but not exclusively. So you might have like Vincent Baker sitting at your table or Meg Baker sitting at your table, during that test, along with people like Richard Ruang, Sharong, like any number of folks who are also game designers, some who are game academics, who that's what they like teach. And those same people also might end up in your general play tests as well. People can pay $20 to just come and play games for the weekend. If you want to run games, it's more expensive. It's about $120, I think. But you're going to get a lot of great feedback. We had some of our staff were just like, I learned so much about my game. Some of them are like, I learned my game works, right? Other ones are like, I learned my game didn't work, and then I learned it didn't work a different way. And by the third time, I had it really on lock for what's coming up. So there's a lot of really great process in there. And like Elliot Davis, More Blueberries, tremendous game designer, sat down to play test a game, and afterwards I saw them, they're like, how'd it go? They're like, great, the game doesn't work at all, right? But they had clarity that the thing they wanted wasn't working and that they had to tear it down to zero or move in a different direction. And that kind of clarity is tremendous. So
it's incredible.
So it's a beautiful little event. I wanted to mention because I want to encourage people to think about going. I want Jeff to come back.
I think it might be in the cards next year. It really, really might be. I've been realizing how much I missed it. I love the event so much.
It's so good. It's also such an reasonably affordable town to like have to go spend time.
Morristown, New Jersey. Beautiful spot.
It is. I want more people to go, but I also want it to not get warped by more people going. Like it's in one of those sweet little spots.
I mean, it's a narrow enough niche event that like if you're feeling the pull to go, like you will be a welcome presence there. Like you either know upon hearing that pitch that you need to be there, or you're like, this is not for me.
Yeah. Critical K, it is part of a trio of cons. Dream Nation DexaCon, is that right?
Dreamation is their like LARP focused event in February. DexCon is their sort of big sort of more general interest.
Big 800 to 1,000 people. Yeah,
Big,
but
big being 800 to 1,000.
yeah.
Like DexCon is their more general interest, general gaming, board game focused, and then Metatopia is all play testing and industry stuff.
I think we're gonna go back to DexCon just to check it out, also too. But Metatopia is a now will be a +1 annual staple as far as when we're going, even with it being so close to PAX. Just too much value in being with our team, getting them to get feedback with designers we're working on bigger projects with, letting them stress test their games and being able to give a lot of publisher support to them is huge. Speaking of which, if you haven't gone over to ttrpg.link yet /enterlight yet, you should, because that is launching later this month. It was great sitting with that team at their feedback sessions for each of them, and hearing that, and then watching classic, like they had over designed their game and their high test was really illuminating at very specific things they could do to go back to a previous version and immediately clean things up, and a few things they could add to just really like turn the game to 11 and really fine tune it for their final development and release leading into the Kickstarter later this month. But that's Hinterlight. It's ttrpg.link correctly. That's great. Go check it out. It's going to be crowdfunding. The Gossamer Coast crew, West Philly locals are doing an amazing job with it. It's absolutely beautiful and gorgeous, and I cannot wait to share it with everybody. So we are super excited about all that. With that said, they'll be on hand at PAX running a lot of it. Jeff, I know we'll both be at PAX. Do you have any big plans for PAX? Or you just rolling around?
Rolling around, honestly. I'm going to meet with some folks. I think it was confirmed yesterday that we're going to have a brief signing at the +1 EXP booth. That'll be Sunday at 3 p.m. And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe I have that space alone. I believe that no one else has been signed.
No, we don't allow other people to go up against Jeff. Who would dare? Viditia probably, but who would dare?
I'm just looking at my notes here. Yeah, I believe that, I'm assuming that I'm going to have the space to myself.
There's only one way to find out, and that's for people to show up.
I'm receiving word. I'm receiving word from my producer that there will be another person at the table.
Unnamed person.
Unnamed person too.
We'll be there the whole weekend. We do, Critical K asked earlier, do we have some sneak peeks? We are every year we use PAX as an opportunity to launch our new line of merch. Usually it's like got some little fun thing with it. I will give my fellow Intrepid merchants a sneak peek. Our theme for this coming year is make hard moves. Referencing the hard move function of PBTA games, specifically Apocalypse World, because we see GMs really struggle with this, but we also think it's especially salient in the world right now that we all need to make hard choices in order to change the state of things around us. And so we want to encourage people to do it in their own lives. We had Aaron King write a short little meditation zine on both design advice for PBTA, but also how we could live our lives a little bit more intentionally, inspired by some of those design choices. We have some dope as shit merch dropping with designs by Adam Voss that will emblazon all those things. We did our first hat. None of this is RPGs.
But it's all exciting.
It's all real cool shit. I mean, one of them was an RPG reflection thing and design thing. We will be launching a year-long make moves jam. The intent is to encourage you not to write a freaking move every day, because who has the time for that, but to, at a few choice moments, to reflect on your life this year and write moves inspired by what you were going through or what you were thinking about, to be really intentional, to make them self-contained. They can be for a system, they cannot. We'll have more information about that coming out next week. This is something that we want to do intentionally, and we'll be adding a fourth show on Wednesday nights with a special guest host. We'll be going through the jam and talking about new moves that people have done, rolling through them, playing through them. But super excited to drop all that stuff at PAX. We'll have Ritual Deck for the first time. We'll have Heaven in the Dust for the first time. We'll have Horrible Night for the first time. Chris McDowell of Bastardland fame will be there. I think we have a couple other little surprises too, but you're gonna have to come by booth 4143 to check it out. You can come by and see Jeff, or come by anytime during the week. We also will be launching a new show that maybe we get Jeff to come by for this also. with Keegan and their puppet Judge, called RPG Court, where you can bring your RPG related problems before us and present them to Judge, have them defended and inquired against, and Judge will make a final ruling. So if you've ever wanted to sue your GM, this is your chance.
Oh
we
my
can make it happen.
gosh. That's incredible.
So we will be doing a number of live versions of that just at the booth, at PAX. We've got a whole bunch of other fun stuff happening. That's booth 4143. Swing on by. Jeff, again, where can people find you at?
You can find all of my work at jeffstormer.com. You can also find me on social pretty much anywhere at either Jeff Stormer or Party of One Pod. You can find Party of One at partyofonepodcast.com. And I mean, gosh, I think that's just about everywhere. Or you can find me on Blue Sky at jeffstormer.gobirds.online.
Awesome. And if y'all have been great, this was tremendous. Really thankful for having you on. And I can't wait to see you next week. Give you a big hug. Everybody, let's get a Go Birds in the chat for anybody out there watching.
Give me some Go Birds in the chat.
And we will see you next time. We still haven't figured out a closing. Jeff, do you have an idea on a closing line for Intrepid Merchants? I'm just throwing this on you now. We go until we figure one out.
Let's see. We'll go with we'll see you. Hold on. You can go with we'll see you down the road, because it's like a traveling thing.
That is good, because the trope is the merchant that you meet numerous times down there. I like that one. All right. Well, we're gonna give that one a try out. This has been Intrepid Merchant, and we'll see you down the road. Bye.